Hi, I'm FalconRad FPV. Today I'm going to be talking about my newest frame design, the 7.5-inch Falcon RPM. It follows in the footsteps of the design of the Falcon 7, but changes things up quite a bit by removing the rear braces and changing the arm and motor layout. So the motor layout on the Falcon 7 is more of a dead cat, which I find really helps to smooth out corners nicely for cinematic flying. Now with the Falcon RPM, I've removed the back braces and changed the arm layout to a little bit closer to an X pattern, which gives it some a little bit better maneuverability and tight cornering. It's a little bit more agile of a flyer, but it still keeps the GoPro mounted down on the main plate, keeping the weight centered between the props nicely. Let's just take a look now at the accessory bag that will also be included. So the top plate has a cutout for a mountable XT60. So you get the XT60E-M, I think it's called. That can be mounted to the top plate here. Your accessory kit will also come with two, I think it's M2.5 fasteners that you can use to secure that onto the top plate there. Oh, and I guess I'll keep the top plate out here because one of the other things that's included, just a little insert if you want to use it, that can press into place in the top plate. And there's going to be a clear one and a colored one with each one. And the accessory kits will also include these little guys, the 1.6 millimeter by 8 millimeter. I think they are also a 1.5 millimeter hex driver. Yeah. And that's to go through the bottom of your bottom plate there and to fasten your O3 air unit. Since I don't have a spare O3 air unit, this is just going to be easier to show you on the already built version here. So I've got the O3 air unit fastened that way up, and also included here will be a small 20 by 14 heatsink that fits just nicely on top of the O3 air unit to help cool it off. I've also included a piece of thermal transfer, double-sided heat transfer tape. So you can use some of that on the back side of your heatsink, and if you want, you can use the other little leftover piece to attach to fasten the O3 air unit down to the bottom plate. There's also going to be a piece of this VHB tape. It's also a double-sided one, and you can use this for putting down your receiver or possibly your VTX. Although I'd guess depending on your VTX, like if you got a rush solo or something like that, you'd probably want to use the heat transfer tape, and then you would stick it down on top of this part in the back here, so it gets a little extra cooling underneath. And also with the Rush Solo, same thing. If you cut your heat transfer tape, because half of it will probably work nicely to keep the heat sink on, and you can use the other half to attach the VTX to the bottom plate. And you just do whatever you want with the VHB tape here. I use it for my receiver. And the last thing in the accessory pack here is a cable that I actually had these custom made. So basically it's exactly like the DJI 3-in-1 cable. And so I had them make this cable just the right length. This is actually, I didn't even use my own good cable. I bought some earlier on and they ended up being just this cheap plastic coated wire. So I've got like 80 of these little plastic coated wire extension things that I'm just going to throw in the garbage, because I'm going to give you guys the nice new silicone custom made ones. But on my build, I've got the crappy one because I didn't have these nice silicone ones yet. They took like a month to come. But these are the same length. So your nice silicone one will fit in just like this. So with the T-Motor F7 Pro full function flight controller, the 3-in-1 cable is just plug and play with the O3 air unit. One end plugs into the flight controller, the other end just feeds in through the hole in the frame here and comes around up back and plugs right into the O3 air unit. So this will just make everything nice and easy for it plugging that all in and connecting it together. Now as well, this is the same connector. Well, it doesn't have the clip-on part on the outside, but it's still the same SH 1.0 6-pin connector that the Rush Solo uses. So although you won't have the click-on part holding it permanently on the outside, this does just fit right in nice and snug into the Rush Solo, and then you can just snip the connector off the other side and then solder that directly to your flight controller. So this will work for people using O3 air units and for the Rush Solo VTX, and I'm sure a bunch of other VTXs will fit the same SH 1.0 6-pin. There's also some more changes to the top plate. It's a little bit bigger than with the Falcon 7. There's a little bit more battery strap positions, and also adds a second GoPro mount to the front of the top plate. That can be used with one of these universal GoPro mounts. I've made several of them up like this, and allows you to mount a second GoPro just above the first one there. If you're doing a shot that's difficult to repeat, you can have one GoPro here in, say, a linear perspective and the other one mounted on top with a wide perspective. Or you can film with wide so that you can use this wide in 4x3 and then use this to stabilize later. And then film this one in super view. So if some of your clips are smooth enough that you can just edit the clip up straight with the super view version without having to use any stabilization, then you can use that one. And if there's some rougher clips where you want to stabilize it a bit, use the 4x3 wide version that you got. You can also do something like locking your frame rate on one of them and leaving the other one on auto. So that way you can try to get the exposure just like you want, but then you've got the secondary backup with the auto exposure, so that even if this one ends up being not quite right for some situations, the auto will take care of at least giving you some decent footage. So my thinking was, by doing one flight, you can almost get 2 takes in one flight. Not 2 takes of how you flew it, but 2 takes for your camera settings. And for me, I'm always messing around with my camera settings, trying to get things as best as I can, and trying to deal with poor lighting conditions because of clouds all the time in the mountains. And then sometimes bright at the top. And so having the 2 different GoPros on at the same time just gives me that many more options of camera settings, and then that much more options of stuff to do in post, having the 2 different versions. Right now I've got GemFan 7040 props on here, but like I was saying, this can spin 7.5 inch props. And with those 7.5 inch props on here and a good size motor, like I'm using the T-Motor Velox 3008 1500 kV, And with the 7.5-inch props, that gives me plenty of power for carrying 2 GoPros, and it's not really an issue for maneuverability. Noticeably better acceleration and top speeds with the 7-inch prop on here than compared to the 7.5. But where the 7.5 prop comes in really handy is carrying that extra weight for your second GoPro, or if you want to use 2 21-700 packs, so 6S2P with 21-700, it ends up being almost like a 900 gram battery. So you want the extra prop size and motor power for carrying all that weight. I found it carries it much better than my 7-inch builds do. Now with the new frame comes some new TPU prints as well. So I've redesigned the front end here, and now it will hold a 19 or a 20 millimeter camera with the single screw on each side or the double screws on both sides. So right here I've got the DJI O3 set up in here, but the same mount will also fit a 19 millimeter analog camera as well. Continuing on the theme of multiple GoPros like I was talking about earlier, I've added a second spot here for a GoPro in the back as well. So it just mounts in underneath the GPS like this. You just gotta pull this other one open a little bit. So there's 4 fasteners with washers that go in on the sides here into the standoffs that are mounted in the TPU part. And that holds your GoPro at the same angle as the front one, so 27 degrees for both of them. So this course is great for doing chase footage, as well as I've gotten some really neat shots diving waterfalls. For other TPU parts, I've made this rear mount so that it can hold the GoPro if you want, but there's also another version, but there's also other versions that I've made that don't have the GoPro mounting spot in it, so it's a nice clean finish for those of you that are not going to be using the rear mount. I've got several different GoPro mounts made up for the front here, one for the Hero 11 Mini, one for the GoPro 8, and then one for the 9 and 10. Since everybody's not going to want to use these extra GoPro mounts on the bottom, I haven't included the plate and standoffs and press nuts needed for that in the regular frame, just to keep the price down for everybody else. But it's available as an add-on, and I can't remember how much it was, but it's only going to be a few dollars. It's not very much. You can take a look at it here on my analog build of the frame. This is an older version, but one that I've made with analog. So there's the GoPro plate mounted on the bottom. It mounts onto with the same fasteners that hold on the back standoffs. And then on the newer version of the frame, there's an extra press nut that sticks out the back here where another standoff goes in to help secure that plate in 3 places, so the GoPro's really solid. And then these rows of lines here, you can install your press nut wherever you want. You'll get several press nuts with the GoPro plate accessory thing if you order it. And you can place those press nuts in where you want them to help you move the mounting position of the universal mount forwards and backwards. Several different versions of this universal mount. There's angled forwards, angled backwards, and a short straight one. And now this same GoPro plate can also mount up on the front here. And the reason I added this one for the front is if you're doing the secondary GoPro mount on the top, you can only go to about 26, 25 degrees. And then you're going to start seeing this other GoPro in view. So for 27 degrees or for 25 degrees and more up tilt, you can use the upper mount. But if you're going to use less up tilt than that, then your secondary GoPro for the front would have to go on the bottom to avoid seeing this one in the picture.